In the spirit of Klarna welcoming an American, Carol, and my Americanness, I have to say that this is super exciting because for me, 1 year ago today, President Barack Obama came to Sweden on a historic visit. And what he focused on in that visit was what we're talking about here today: diversity, women's leadership, and innovation. It is so fantastic to be here and look out at all of you. And, you know, I want to give a hand to Klarna and all the founders and everyone who's put this together. Women's leadership and figuring out what works and advancing women is a new phenomenon. It's tough. It's an experiment. We're all working together. So I think it's so cool that we've done this tonight. And I think it's so cool to see so many amazing women out there in the audience. You are proof against the one incredibly annoying comment that we read and hear time and again. There just aren't enough women out there. There aren't enough women to fill the roles. You guys are proof of that. We have proof of that right here. And so I want to begin by introducing these amazing women and just say, you know, we've all been chatting and talking and connecting over the past 2 weeks preparing for this panel, and these women epitomize, not only are they great entrepreneurs, great leaders, they're really nice, cool, amazing, down-to-earth women. So I think it's going to be an amazing treat to have them share their stories with us today. So let me start by introducing them. We have here Eva Cederbalk, professional board member and advisor, and chairman of the board for Klarna.
Thank you.
Joanna Shields, Chair for Tech City UK, Director of the London Stock Exchange Group, Prime Minister David Cameron's advisor on the digital economy. And most recently, excitingly, she is a newfound Baroness. She has received the Order of the British Life Peer in the House of Lords. Pretty cool. Yay. Gunilla Herlitz, CEO of Dagens Nyheter, acting president for Expressen and head of business area News Sweden. Yay. Catharina Lavers Mallet, head of studio for King in London. Yes. Louise Eriksson, founder and CEO of Vint and serial entrepreneur. So I want to begin talking a little bit about leadership, risk-taking, and what does it take to get up here, to be where these women stand today. Joanna, I want to start with you and say, you know, you really have been, I mean, this not to be cheesy, you have been a pioneer in the tech industry. I mean, you've gone through, let me read this, 4 IPOs, 3 acquisitions, and you're now really breaking ground in this new role that's cross-pollinizing the public and private sector in the UK. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, where did this passion for entrepreneurship come from? How did you get where you are today?
Well, for me, when I was 5 years old, my father lost his job. And he lost his job because his work found out that he was working in our basement, you know, manufacturing products, and you weren't allowed to do that according to union rules. So my dad lost his job, and I watched my family go through this incredible crisis. And I learned early on that, you know, in a time of crisis, there were 5 kids and my parents, that you really needed to rely on yourself. You had to find a way to, you know, whatever happens in life, you've got to be able to step back and say, what can I do to solve this problem? And I guess it took away my fear of entrepreneurship, because my father actually did succeed. It took a lot of time. He eventually built a manufacturing company and had a big success in the end, but it was that catalyst of losing his job that actually, that floor dropping out from underneath us as kids and my family, that, you know, really taught me that no matter how bad things look or how tough things are, you know, you gotta give it a go, and I have the courage to do that from that experience, and I've used that throughout my life.
Do you think that made you more or less afraid of risk and failure?
Well, I think in some sense, and we talked about this in our
on the
conversations on the phone, is you know, I didn't really have a lot to lose. You know, I thought, well, I often say things as a professional, like, we're going to do this, and it's this high bar. And somehow we get there as a team, and I think that's extraordinary. And sometimes you hear yourself, it comes out of you, and you tell your team, like, we're gonna achieve this, and everybody looks at you like, really? But then eventually, you know, little by little, you just pull everyone together with that energy and enthusiasm and belief that you can accomplish anything. And I think that that's the real secret of success.
Oh, that's a great story. Thank you. Catharina, you know, leadership is a lot about making tough choices sometimes and really being uncomfortable, diving in head first. You have had a little bit of an interesting career trajectory. You followed your instincts and you did something different. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
About the many times I've been uncomfortable, yeah.
We love to hear that.
I actually started off my career in the very, very sexy space of operational risk management, which meant that I traveled around meeting with banks all around the world, advising them on how to reduce the risk in their business. And I became really kind of good at it. And I realized after a couple of years that this was a problem, because I was becoming really good at something that I really wasn't that passionate about. And I was 26, 27, and said, you know, I have a long career ahead of me. Is this really what I'm going to be doing? So I decided to go back to business school and figure out what I was going to do with myself. And at the end of 2 very expensive years in business school, I realized that I still did not know what I wanted to do with myself. But I moved from the US to London, because while we were uncomfortable, we might as well be really uncomfortable and go to a place where I didn't know anybody and had no network. And through former coworkers and sort of friends of friends, I was introduced to some people in the games industry. This was in 2009 when social games were really taking off. I mean, this was sort of back in the days when Farmville was just becoming a thing. And I started talking to all these people and talking to my friends and say, well, maybe this games industry thing sounds cool. And they looked at me and they said, are you crazy? You're not a games person. You know, you're a financial services consultancy, preppy kind of person. And games is, you know, for guys who sit in the basement and don't come out to, you know, all this stuff. But the more people I met, the more I said, yeah, these are actually my people, right? These are people who are smart and creative and super passionate about what they do. And we were at this time in the industry where we had absolutely no idea where it was going or what it was going to become. And did people actually want to play social games? And did they want to play at this time? At this point, it was on Facebook, and bringing women into the market and really revolutionizing the way people were playing. I said, this is cool. This is for me. And so I took a job in the games industry, and I was my first job paid less than what I earned before I went to business school, which, by the way, is not the way it's supposed to go. And you know, everybody said it was crazy, and I said, this is my choice. This is what feels right, and it was absolutely the best career choice I made, hands down. It's been an incredible ride.
That is fantastic. You know, this morning I had the pleasure of interviewing Sheryl Sandberg, and a lot of the things that we're talking about today I have in my mind from talking to her. And one thing she has said that always sticks with me is, today the career track has really changed. No longer do you go into a job and sit 25 years and get your gold watch at the end and retire. She says famously, you know, the career should be viewed as a jungle gym and not a ladder. And Catharina, that's kind of what we've discussed. And Eva, you and I also discussed creating kind of a dynamic career trajectory for yourself, and you've done so. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, I'll do that. In my case, I think one of my drivers still is actually curiosity. So I started after a period of doing a trainee program. I started as a financial analyst at the finance company on the credit side, and after like 18 months, I thought, I don't know if I want to do this and for the rest of my life, as exactly as you said. It seems to be fun to be a salesperson. So I discussed that with the person that was heading the sales department. I would like to be a salesperson. What? And but anyway, okay, you can try it. So I did, and I did that for 2 years. And then I thought perhaps. No, I will not do this for the rest of my life. It's so short-sighted, so to speak. And then I also said I would like to do more like product development, and I did that. Okay, I had a long career. You can understand that, but so I won't go through everything. But I mean, I give you another. I would say, and after some years, my friends, colleagues, they started really to climb, but I didn't. And I said to myself, well, it doesn't really matter. It will be fixed in the end, so to speak. And the last really jump, not the last one, but the major jump, which surprised so many. I was with one of the major banks, SEB, and I was the head of their card business, which was quite big at that time. It still is, I guess. And I just discussed with myself and said, well, I have one of the most interesting jobs you can have, but I still like the group. I would like to continue to work for the group. Then perhaps it's time for me now to do really banking. And so I did that, and I had the opportunity to broaden myself, and which was very, I think, it was good for me to do that, and not to stay on a very... I would say a very interesting and a very sort of a fine job, but to broaden myself and to learn more things.
Thank you. And that is a great example of taking a risk. We see a little bit of a theme amongst everyone up here, but it's also an area where when all of the academics, the World Bank, the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor does research, Forbes magazine, why are there not more female entrepreneurs? Why are there not more women in Silicon Valley? The answer always is, according to them, fear of risk-taking, fear of failure. Apparently, according to statistics and Forbes recently, less than 40% of women actually feel that the business idea they are proposing will succeed. How many men do you think believe in their idea? I mean, 2,000%, yeah. They all believe in themselves a lot. But I want to ask you, Louise, you have started 2 businesses by the age of 28. You're a serial entrepreneur. What made you you? What made you go for it in a way that is statistically not with conjunction with your peers?
Thank you for opening with that very simple question.
Yeah, I like to take it up a level.
Yeah. No, but it's interesting. So this is a question you mentioned now I'm running a company named Vint. So I have 3 male co-founders, and we've been discussing this because throughout my career with my other companies and with my friends and people within the industry, I've seen this fear. So I definitely see that it's there. I'm not sure that it's just within tech. We were discussing, is it actually more women in tech that are afraid of taking risks, or is it more like overall? And yeah, obviously there is some reports showing that it's even, like women are even more afraid of taking risks within tech. But I've definitely seen it, and even now when we're trying to hire female sort of tech, engineer and tech power, people that we want to recruit is afraid of accepting our offer because they're afraid that they're not good enough, which is outrageous. And in regards to what made me me, I love risks. I love this phase where I'm in now with Vint that we launched in the US 3 weeks ago. We've been running in Stockholm since January. It's amazing because we have no idea what we're doing. And the risk is huge in whatever we're trying on. And I have no real response to why I love risks. But one thing I've been discussing with some friends throughout the last year is one sort of phenomena that I've seen. And that is most young boys, they go play soccer, ice hockey, lacrosse, whatever, baseball. It's a team sport. So they have teammates. They learn how to become a leader within their groups, within their peers. They have teammates saying, well done, or it doesn't matter, you missed the sort of, you did not score, as long as you try to make it up again, we're good, let's make this, let's do it together. So they learn that, you know, having failures is okay. It's not just their trainer and instructor, it's actually their friends saying, you're good, don't worry about it, let it go, and let's move forward. Whereas young girls, they often do ballet, we do horseback riding, we go do gymnastics. All of these sports are one-on-one sports. So your friends become your competition. And you are only, you know, either you're going to win or you're going to lose based on your performance, and that's it. So you don't have anyone saying, that's, you know, it's okay, I have your back, we're still going to score this game or we're going to win. So I think that's a huge difference. And I was lucky enough to have a dad who started a girls' soccer team when I was 7 because there was no soccer team for girls. He started an ice hockey team by the age of 9 because my brothers were playing ice hockey and I should be able to too. Oh no, he didn't play. He did not start an ice hockey team, but he made sure that I could play with the boys. Because of course, I should also play ice hockey if I wanted to. So I feel bad because I was so embarrassed by him standing on the soccer field or by the ice hockey rink every week, shouting and screaming, and them saying to him to leave the site because he was too into the game. But I think that's a huge part of why I feel so confident, because I had a dad that made sure that he proved that he believed in me and I could do whatever I want to do. And on top of that, I gained friends telling me it's all right, just go for it. So I think that's a huge part of it.
Great point. We're laughing because Gunilla and I were both ice skaters, and Joanna is a dancer. So, you know, maybe that's why I'm so selfish in the end. But actually, I do want to follow up on this, though, because there is a counter thought, counter movement saying, but hey, wait a minute, you know, isn't it good to be a little bit reflective? Isn't it good to be a little bit cautious? We just came out of a big recession where women leaders like Christine Lagarde actually said, hey, if we had more women in banking who are a little bit more risk averse, maybe we wouldn't be where we are. I've spoken to a lot of investors that say they actually love when a woman pitches because you can see she's not diving in head first, that she's thinking about these things. I mean, do all women have to be superheroes, you know? Perhaps you can respond, Louise, and also Eva or Joanna or Gunilla, you all hire women. What do you look for?
I just have one short comment before on the subject. Yeah, because I just want to say, and then you can discuss this specific thing, but just one thing before we dive in too deep in this discussion, because I think it's a bit dangerous, because if you think that you're not going to succeed, you're not going to succeed. But if you think you're a bloody rock star, you're going to be a rock star. So
whether you're a man or a woman.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter. It's just in your mind. So before we discuss if we should stay, you know, to be afraid and not take risks, or like just be risk averse, I think we should have that in, you know, with us when discussing this.
This is so good. We have something going on here. All right. Anyone want to respond? Joanna, Gunilla, how do you feel about this?
No, I think I'm kind of risk avert, and I don't think it's necessarily a disadvantage. But sometimes I find women a little bit afraid of change, and change could include risk, but change is good, I think.
I think you need balanced teams, men and women. Now, I know a lot of women who are completely risk averse, and I know a lot of women who love change and like are exhilarated by change and can't wait to take the step into the beyond. So I think it's a balance, and I think it goes back to the best teams I've seen in my career. The best successes I've seen have been men and women, risk takers, you know, more calm, sort of like hold on a minute thinkers. And I think that logic combined with that energy and creativity is really what, you know, helps teams succeed. So I think it's not really men or women. I think maybe there's more women on one end than the other, and we should think about that. But the reality is it's about balanced teams, gender balanced teams.
And I guess that's the answer to your question as well. What you asked us what we are looking for when we're hiring people, hired lady, and and that depends, of course, in what team that person should work in, and how she or he would sort of fit in.
Absolutely. No, I think we're getting into a really cool area because there's a lot of provocative talk about this. there's been an entire book and, series of academic articles called the Athena Doctrine, talking about the fact that there are certain qualities that are very female, being empathetic and team-oriented, and that these qualities are now rising in leadership, and that that's what people are looking for. Some people vehemently disagree with that it's not biological, it's who you are, it's individual. Whatever you think, one person I know that I've talked to, a lot of her employees, and I know them, Gunilla, has been named as an amazing leader. She works for the media industry, which is a difficult industry now, and many people have said to me that they really admire your leadership style. You're decisive, but you remain yourself. How have you developed that? Has that been difficult? I mean, you are in a tough industry. I'm sure it's not easy.
But I think, like we said before, it's I mean, what personality you have. But I wanted to respond. I think I do find men to be more afraid of conflicts. And women being more able to handle conflicts, not being afraid of dealing with conflicts. And I think that's something that I have no problems with conflicts. Actually, I do love conflicts. I feel like they are inspiring.
Good for you.
And I think, like, if I would describe my leadership style,
how would you describe?
I have no agenda ever at a meeting, so no one knows what will happen.
Yeah.
And since I work with a lot of men, they like, processes and so on, boxes. But I think it's about creating families where you work. I mean, close colleagues and a team. And then it's not a question of in my now I'm actually the president of 3 newspapers from today.
Yay!
But at Dagens Nyheter, the management team is consisted of 4 men and 4 women, but it's not just a question of the balance between the sexes, it's also what men. I mean, there are different men and different women with being more feminine qualities and more masculine qualities. But I think to create a team and to have fun and to be really not afraid of challenges, I mean, I think that's most important.
I love what you said there, because it segues right into something that I think is really important to talk about, is really important in this industry and the whole tech community at large, and that's culture. How do you create an inclusive, open, positive, innovative, empathetic culture? Catharina, you and I talked a lot about that and how you feel at King. Can you tell me a little bit about, why is culture important? How do you sustain it? How do you sustain it as startups get bigger and bigger? How do you sustain it on a global scale when you're present in different countries? All of the above.
How much time?
Lots of questions.
I'm culture obsessed. I probably spend a good third of my time thinking about culture, environment, and all of these things. So when I joined King 2.5 years ago, we were less than 200 people. And we are now just around 1,000.
Wow.
So we've grown a lot. And I think the reason why we've been able to grow as quickly as we can, as we have, and still feel like the same company is because we invest so much in culture. So not to ramble on too much about King, although it's an amazing place. To join King, you go through at least 6 interviews, which can be pretty painful, just from a logistical point of view, and it's obviously very expensive for the organization. But whenever we step back and we say, actually, should we cut it down? The resounding reply is always, no way, we think it's so valuable. Because it's really, relatively speaking, it's fairly easy to identify if somebody has the skills required to do the job. It's a lot harder to say, does this person fit, right? And is this person actually going to drive the business forward? Do they have the same values that we have? So, for example, at King, we're extremely collaborative and very non-hierarchical. Some might say very Swedish across all of our offices. And so if you have one person who's really an egomaniac and just wants to be standing at the front all the time and thinks that, well, you know, I have the biggest, most senior title, so therefore I have the best idea, that's a pretty fast way to kill whatever it is you've got going on. Then everybody else steps back and says, all right, I'll check out, let me know when you need me to do something again. So I think reinforcing the culture, making sure that everybody is aware of what that culture is, because for a long time you sort of feel it in your gut, right? To say, what is it? Is this person king? Is this king behavior? Although that maybe sounds a little cultish. A little. But you know, as we got bigger, we actually had to go through the process of saying, okay, well, what is it? What is our culture? What is it actually? What does it mean? What are we looking for? And it's been, I think, a really healthy exercise for everybody, because now it's clear and everybody says, yep, this is me, or you know what, this is not me, and therefore I shouldn't be working in this place, and then it's a lot easier from the get-go.
I have to ask, what is king behavior? I need to know.
What is king behavior? So we change a lot. So I think it's being adaptable to change, very much a focus on just get stuff done. Don't worry about whose job is it, or is this part of my job description, or you know, just get it done. A focus on doing absolute best possible quality. So we think that deadlines are important because it's, you know, when you commit to something, you should honor that commitment, and other people are making decisions based around the commitment, but it's not the schedule that matters. At the end, it's the quality, right? And if the quality isn't there, we're not going to launch the game, right? We're not going to ship whatever it is that needs to be shipped. I think another thing that's really important is just the idea of being a fun place and being a friendly environment. Whenever you join, everybody's welcoming you. You know, it's not just the cupcakes and the slide in the office and all the parties, right? It's the... Do you see that name dropping there? Yeah. That was good. Wait, there's a slide. It's a very nice slide.
You need that for Tech City.
Yeah. You just need one that goes up as well somehow. Go up the stairs.
This would be a good one in here.
Yeah, so moving on from the slide. I got completely lost by my slide.
That's my fault. I'm a bad moderator. I'm sorry. You'll get it back.
But just that sort of inclusive, collaborative culture. And so to go back to the women's point a little bit, I think we've been talking a lot about, well, what's it like for women like this and men like this, and are women risk averse? And you know, it doesn't matter. I really think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And it goes back to a little bit about what you were saying, Joanna. It's about having the right combination of people, and whether that's building your team or building your culture. You know, you want people with different perspectives and different attitudes and different approaches to risk or time management or whatever. Sure. And if you're a man or a woman, I don't actually think it makes a difference, as long as you have the breadth and the diversity.
Absolutely. Louise, I know that this is something we've discussed, and you know, I think it's one thing to create a great culture. It's very difficult to create a great culture within individual companies, but it's also a question, you know, how do we create a great collaborative culture in the tech community at large? And I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts a little bit about that. As someone who's been here and you've just moved to San Francisco, what does it take as a CEO? How do you walk the walk? What's important?
If I can come back to what you were discussing first, and in the sense of company culture overall, I think it's also a big part of what you're doing with your company culture is not only what you're doing internally, but also externally. So which other companies are you working with? Which conferences are you attending? Which panels are you doing? And so forth. Which, you know, what are you saying in media? And I think that's super important too. And also with companies being sponsors of events and, you know, making sure we know that there's been a huge sort of media thing and discussions about tomorrow's event, Stockholm Tech Fest. And I think that's a big discussion to have, but that's also proof of that there's being changes in terms of how companies are considering and working with their company culture. And this is one thing that I think is important, that we have the discussion on what is okay and what is a good culture, and that we are not afraid to have the debate. With that said, it shouldn't go overboard and just take all of our time. We were just discussing earlier as well. It's hard because when you're women and you're like entrepreneur in this case, or a company leader, you often come to interviews and at least one of the questions is in regards to the sort of women and male perspective, and that in itself can be draining. So I do think we need to also, culture-wise and in the tech community, uplift people because of interesting stuff they're doing and good ideas and expertise and knowledge, and not get all sort of focused on specific topics, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's a great.
I just want to
jump
say,
in.
I think that I heard tonight that there were 1,000 women who responded saying they were coming tonight. I don't know how many of you guys are here, but all I want to say is that about the community, we are part of something so incredibly special. I mean, we are part of technology that's changing how we live our lives and interact with each other. It's transforming everything that we do. It's challenging old business models, and it's actually what's driven the economic recovery across Europe, which is also really important. I mean, the companies that you're working in, the work that you're contributing, the teams that you're involved in, the products that you're delivering, all those things are what are actually turning things around for Europe. And it's so special to be part of it. Like, I have goosebumps, you know? I mean, it is, you guys out here are changing the world, and that is incredible. You know, and if we can just continue this momentum, come together like this in forums like, thank you, Klarna, for bringing people together like this, because this is where you'll make that connection, you'll support each other. And I think there's nothing more important. Like, no interaction with another woman in this industry should go by without you giving something. You know, I think it's great if you can spend time mentoring and you can organize things, but sometimes it's just that word of advice that's pulling someone aside. It's like, don't worry about that. It wasn't the best, day for you, but you've been great, and you're gonna do this. You're gonna rock it next week. And it's that little bit of those little words of encouragement all along the way that actually build a person's confidence and enable us all to achieve great things. So thank you, Klarna.
That was wonderful. It's no surprise that David Cameron has chosen you as his digital advisor.
And cheerleader.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I mean, and speaking of that, it's a really, in one way, there's a lot of pressure on CEOs in general, especially on women CEOs. There's another side to social media that really reflects every single thing you do, every single conference you go to, every single speech you make is scrutinized. At the same time, I think something we talk about at the embassy a lot, something that the US and Europe is working on together, is how much businesses and especially innovative companies can do to have a social impact. And I just want to kind of reflect back, Joanna, and ask you a little bit about your role, because this is really fresh ground. I mean, this is visionary, public and private, working in such a way, especially kind of in the technology realm. It's not just a big industry with the government. This is new, exciting stuff. What kinds of things are you working on? What makes a great, innovative ecosystem within a city? What advice do you give, David Cameron? Can you give us a little insight there?
Well, if you go back a couple of years in the depths of this recession, and, Europe felt it longer and harder than the US, definitely. I mean, it took us longer to pull ourselves out, and some of the economies are still not there. But what was unique about this tech city movement in London was the recognition that something was happening. The green shoots were coming up. There were flowers blooming, and so what government did, and I was on the other side. I was running Facebook at the time. What government did was they opened up the doors of number 10 Downing Street and invited entrepreneurs and business people in and said, "What's going on out there? How do we help?" So that conversation, that open door policy is what led to entrepreneur visas, R&D tax credits, something called the patent box, which if you develop technology in Britain, you forever will only pay 10% tax on that. Because you developed it there and you invested in the community. And the government heard that and came back with these innovative policies that have helped the industry thrive. Now, the industry did it on its own. I mean, let's face it, you guys are the business builders. You're the ones who actually delivered these incredible results. But what government did was listen for the first time and then react immediately with policies that made a difference. And I think it's a model. I really commend them. And it started long before I got there, by the way. I have to say there are a lot of people who pioneered this along the way. But, we've carried it through, and it's made a real impact.
Thank you. Maybe I'll ask you, Eva, a little bit about Stockholm. We're heading into Stockholm Tech Fest, which is really something to highlight and leverage. What's special about Stockholm as an innovative center? What's great about the Stockholm ecosystem? What would you change?
Oh, what a question. Thank you for that.
You have to throw a few.
What's so
tough
special
ones.
about Stockholm? I don't know really. Sorry?
All of them.
Yeah, all of them. That's
exactly.
exactly. Obviously, there've been a lot of people have been attracted to Stockholm to start to work here and to develop things. And even though there haven't been any really, programs or state initiatives or things like that, have been a lot of attraction for tech companies, and there is a huge, from quite an early stage, there was a huge tech center in Kista, and I think that has sort of started things, and I think that is the main reason really. It's I guess at the bottom, it is more perhaps coincidence, really. One success led to another success, and so on.
Oh, that's great.
I don't know.
We've been really highlighting, and this is the right thing to do, to bring out the positive of everyone, because we have some amazing women here. But I think it's also important to share mistakes, regrets, challenges, the times we've cried in our pillow or corner, whatever it is, because I certainly do it all the time. Let me ask each of you, what has been your greatest regret? Or, yes,
Yeah,
Gunilla's ready. Yeah, she's ready for it.
No, I'm just standing here on this panel, and I'm feeling like the black sheep because I'm working in a disruptive industry, and that means constantly decreasing revenues. I'm not growth. And when I went to San Francisco in May with 2 colleagues, we met Michael Markowitz, who is he's chairman here at Klarna, and he looked at us, giving us. Pardon?
Michael Moritz. I am
Michael. I said the member of the board. Excuse me.
Sorry
Of
about
course,
that.
yes.
We need a woman chair.
And he was he was not interested in what we had to tell him. He was just fibbling, like this. And then he went like, "God, you are busy dying." And then we went to the car, and I was sitting like this, not talking. And then one of my colleagues said, "I wonder how did it ever happen that we ended up on this expedition, saving Willie, the whale that everyone loves, but is dying." And therefore, at the same time, I read Sheryl Sandberg, and she gave, I guess many of you have read that book, Lean In, and she gave a very good piece of advice to women and to men. When you choose a job, if you change, don't care if it's a position that is below what you had before, or if the salary is not as high, just go for growth.
Yeah,
And you hear you standing, so I just say, good for you, because, that's the most important, I really do think, because then the job changes all the time. Like you said, 200 to 1,000 in a year, 2 years, yeah.
It's growth.
Yeah.
I don't know how we can top that, but Catharina, why don't we talk about your greatest
that was my
regret?
mistake.
Yeah, or mistake.
So while I've made lots of mistakes, I think maybe there's one kind of moment that is maybe worth talking about. When I let's go back to business school again. I feel like I'm talking a lot about business school tonight. But normally, when you graduate business school, you spend all this time in business school recruiting, and you come out with a job, which clearly I didn't do. And what had happened was, since, as I said earlier, I got to the end and I said, I don't really know what I want to do, I decided to do what most people do when they don't know what they want to do when they're in business school, which is go into strategy consulting. And so I had this great job lined up with a strategy consulting firm, and so then that was in London. That's why we were going to move to London. My husband arranged for a transfer with his job. Everything was awesome. My career was going to really begin. Except it was 2009. And so they called me up a couple months before and said, so we don't know if you know, but there's a recession going on. And we don't think you should move to London. And I said, well, why shouldn't I move to London? And they said, well, we don't actually have a job for you anymore. Shit. This is not what you want to hear at the end of your second year of business school when all the recruiting is done and then you're just supposed to be partying for the last couple months and begin. So I went through this time of saying, my career is over before it began. Here I took this huge risk. I walked away from my high-paying job in finance. This was supposed to be my fresh start, and now I've been cut off at the knees, and life is over. It's maybe slightly melodramatic, but that's how I roll. And in hindsight, now I can say, well, because this awful thing happened to me, I ended up joining the games industry and ending up where I am now, where I couldn't be happier. And I think had I gone down the strategy consulting route, who knows where I would have gone, but it probably would not have been as unpredictable, as crazy, or certainly as fun as what it's been.
Yay. That's great. I've gotten the 5-minute warning, and there's a question I really want to ask each of the panelists. So maybe instead of wallowing in mistakes and negativity, we will say, I would really love each of you kind of to dig down, you have already, but give us a great, to this room of women. We've all kind of looked at you and mentioned you, and we're so excited by what's going on here. What is one piece of advice you would give each of these women out there? Eva.
Yeah. It sounds very simple, and my advice is that you should be very cautious when you choose your boss. and to try to reflect on this person, whether he or she will be supportive, would like to see you develop, and like to see you really be successful, and perhaps even more successful than that person is. So I think that is really an advice from own experience.
Very good advice. My husband is my boss, so I think I've chosen well. Joanna.
I guess I was still thinking about the regret side.
Well,
so
then
I'm
we
stuck
can do
on
whatever you want.
I'm stuck on one thing.
We're open.
And I think my only advice to women is when I had my son, I was the CEO of a startup company, and we were raising money, and I remember giving a presentation, running to the bathroom to throw up, and coming back and giving a presentation. And you know what I mean? That really hard slog of getting through raising money for a startup. And then the board, when I finally told them I was pregnant, they were not happy. They're like, we finally hired a woman CEO and she gets pregnant, and it's like, and then you feel kind of embarrassed, like, oh my God, they know I had sex. Embarrassing. It's like this realization. They look at your stuff, and you're like, whoa. Anyway, I just thought I'd liven it up a bit. But I guess my only thing is, because of all that pressure, and my son's 15 now, so it's been a while, but because of all the pressure. I wait. So because he's older now, but I remember this feeling of, if I cracked everybody up, this feeling of, like I've got to go back to work right away. I think Sweden has the right idea. Women take a requisite good amount of time to bond with their children and have that magical moment that only we as women can have with our kids. And I took my son in a Moses basket like 5 days later into the office. Like you can hardly go at that stage. But I felt like I had to prove something. And no matter what I did, it was still annoying for them that I had this experience. And no, this is in San Francisco. But I have to say that men do not apologize when they take time with their kids. Women apologize when they take time. Stop apologizing. Take the time with your children. They are only little ones. My son now, he's hairy and smelly. He's like tall and giant, and it's over now. And you miss so much. And I remember dropping him off at school and crying and seeing women hanging out with their prams at Starbucks and feeling really let down that I missed something. And I do say that is the one regret I have. And I just do not apologize. You perform the most important function in the world, and that is, bringing children into this world. And just give yourself a break. And remember, when you start apologizing, think twice and say, you know what? My male colleague will not do the same thing. And just suck it back in. Don't say it.
Thank you. That was awesome. Gunilla?
I think I will give two pieces of advice. First, I think really you should choose a job where the result counts, not the time spent. That is very, very important. And my second advice would be to you to really understand that you don't have to, really make a career first and then have the children. You could have the children first and then start really working long hours. You don't have to do it at the same time. That's very important because life is very long. I started my career at the age of 39. So it's
amazing. Thank you.
That is all really, really good advice. I have to say, I really, really strongly believe in all four of those pieces of advice. But saying that, I think my piece of advice would be be very cautious about accepting advice. Good point. Because it's very easy to be influenced by people who you respect or people who have prestigious backgrounds or seem really impressive. But at the end of the day, it's your life and you have to live with those choices. So you have to make the choice that's the one that actually feels right for you.
That's a great.
So what do we have left? I always say just do it, like just go do it. And it's funny because we've been discussing risk-taking and stuff, but I think the crowd here mostly go do it. So then I would say don't be afraid to not be liked. This is one of my big mistakes. I've been so afraid of people not liking me that I haven't taken action on stuff that I knew that I had to do. And I sort of wrapped in, things that I needed to tell people into stuff at the end, they don't even get it because I was trying to be so kind and nobody wins. So don't try to be kind and don't feel like you have to be liked by everyone. And I definitely see this within, my friends and my peers. So don't be afraid to not being liked. And read up on the singularity thesis. This is going to change the world and we should be on top of it.
Yeah, thank
That's
you. I think we are wrapping up, sadly. You guys have been amazing. Thank you for sharing so openly and so generously with your life stories. And we look so forward to seeing what you do with the next Life is Long. So we have our high expectations for all of you. Let's give them a hand of applause.